What's up, musical geniuses? All right, so in this video, I'm going to cover the idea of libertarianism and communism kind of back and forth and talk a little bit about how that makes sense to your musical reality, about owning your own project, owning your own songs, what is it to own intellectual property, all of that sort of thing. I am going to be trying to throw unfinished ideas at you pretty much the whole time. And the reason for this is that we have a final presentation coming up at the end of the course. We have 3 more lectures to go before the end of it. This is, one down next week, and then we're going to be doing final presentations, so please grab a group, sign up. It's about that time. So I'm going to be trying to throw ideas at you that you can use for your final presentation, and I will jump into that right now. We'll talk about libertarianism, communism, and along the way, I'm going to be trying to throw philosophy ideas at you so that you have good ideas for your final presentation. Without further ado, let's get into libertarianism. Okay, so we need to still talk about communism and deontology, and these are kind of the end of ethics. And as I said before, if you think about politics, it sits on top of your ethics, right? So the ethics is underneath, and then the politics is something that grows out of your ethics. And this is because when you think about what countries should do, what laws should be, how society should be set up, these are political ideas. They should come from your ethics because they come from what you think is the right thing to do, right? If you believe in giving human rights to everybody, it's going to show up in your politics. If you believe that people don't have a right to take anything from you without your consent, that's going to arise from your ethics, right? And politics kind of manifests itself in this left-right, left-wing, right-wing idea that we start to see on this linear level when people talk about right and left. And like I always say, I don't know how to say that something is right-wing or left-wing in Thailand because it's a lot more complex than that. So the Americans really think in terms of this left-right thing, and the Europeans do too. These are the way the parties get laid out, right? And here on the left, let's forget about this sign right here, but you have somebody who's in the middle of the spectrum, whatever that means. And then you move over on the left is the Democratic Party of the United States. And they want to give more things to people, usually. And they don't feel bad about taxing wealthy people and taxing companies to try to give things to people for free. Socialism starts to be even more about giving things to people regardless of whether they work, whether they earn it, what choices they make, right? Socialist policies are things like giving everybody food, that you could have like food stamps or, like giving people $1,000 a month for food. When I mentioned before in an earlier lecture, UBI, Universal Basic Income, which means we just give you money and then you spend it on something. Unemployment insurance is more of a socialist idea. These are expressions of our ethics because you basically say it's not important whether or not you work for it and you earn it. It's just important that you're a human being and we want this to be given to you. Now, of course, people on the right criticize socialism because they say, hey, if you give people things for free, why would they ever work? If they're not hungry, why are they going to go work, especially at McDonald's or at a gas station or something? Why would they go work some terrible job if they're being fed? So critics of socialism will say, you're not going to be able to incentivize work, right? So you decide what you believe. So let's go over to the right for a minute. In the United States, the Republicans usually are fans of not taxing people a lot and not helping people, right? And you can decide whatever you want to believe. To the right of that would be the Libertarian Party, who believes we should give maximum freedom to people. We should only protect life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or the pursuit of property, however you read this. And the government's job is just to do that, just to stop crime. And these are crimes where somebody is coming over and actually like doing violence to you. That's a crime, right? Somebody is taking your stuff that you have legitimately earned. That's a crime. If I'm not wearing a seatbelt, that's not a crime. Taxes. They don't like the idea of taxes, especially not graduated taxes that hit the rich harder and leave the poor alone, right? They want everybody to be subject to the same rules, but they want the possibility of somebody becoming really rich to happen, and they want the people who become rich to not have any, they shouldn't have to have any obligation to the rest of people. Now, a couple of criticisms of this idea would come from the idea that, like, okay, let's say Jeff Bezos is a billionaire. Why is Jeff Bezos a billionaire? He's Amazon, right? And I know that you can't get anything in Amazon in Thailand because they have to take care of China, right? They don't want to let an American company ship things in, so you can't get Amazon stuff in Thailand. You can, but you have to pay a bunch of money and you have to track it down in some warehouse somewhere far away for a whole day, and then you have to pay 2,000 baht to get your, one book or something. I know because I've done that a bunch of times. Critics of libertarianism would say, Jeff Bezos is a billionaire. Why? He's a billionaire because he ships things all over the world. He's a global American company. Why is he able to do this? Well, he's able to do this because the whole world is working together in a state of world peace right now. I mean, we're not in World War II. We're not in World War I. We're not in the 30 Years' War. Technology has unified us all. We're all talking to each other. We're all caring about each other. We're all unified as a world. And in that world, Amazon can exist because there's world peace. If there was not world peace, as soon as Amazon started to ship something on a big ship, and let's say they have a bunch of expensive computers on some ship, if I was a pirate, I would just go take that ship because it's wartime and you can just do whatever you want. You just go steal stuff whenever you want because we don't live in world peace. The world right now has peace and order, and the people who benefit the most from peace and order are the people who own gigantic companies that do business all around the world. So shouldn't the billionaires be paying more for that peace because they are using it in order to make money? This is one of the arguments against libertarians, and we didn't talk about the problems with libertarians, so I wanted to get to it. Another one is called the tragedy of the commons. Now let me stop and say, yes, I'm saying that like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, they are benefiting from peace, and so they should pay for it. They should pay for it. But do they pay for it? No. They should pay for it, though. And this should argument is an ethical situation, but there's no mechanism that forces them to pay for it. They might think, oh, yeah, maybe all the world living together is something that benefits me more than it benefits everybody else, and so I should need to pay for this society because I benefit so much from all of these people who are willing to work together and not fight each other. The other argument, big argument against libertarianism is called the tragedy of the commons. And the tragedy of commons basically means I'm a human and I have human rights, and you can't make me a slave, and you can't take my stuff, and you can't kill me for no reason. You can't come and beat me up. Those are some laws. But what if I am a polar bear? What if I am a 2,000-year-old tree? What if I am an ocean? Oceans and trees and bears and space, none of these things have human rights. And so simply protecting human rights doesn't stop us from destroying the entire world. So a lot of people will criticize libertarianism and say, yeah, it makes sense in this interpersonal sense. But as a system for governing a unified world where all of the humans in the world are kind of working together or should be working together, libertarianism doesn't solve some of these big problems. Like who benefits the most from world peace, who's drawing the most benefits from world peace versus who's doing it. Governments are doing it, right? Governments are holding back from the brink of war. Diplomats are talking instead of fighting, right? And these people, all of their money, it comes from taxes. Okay, so you have a lot to argue about in the comments already, I see. One step away from libertarianism is anarchy. And anarchy is no rule, and it's where you think that, hey, if we got rid of all of these governments, we would have a good situation because humans are good. The problem is we would have, of course, no organization. And critics of anarchy would say, if you don't have anybody holding power, the first person who's going to be the strongest and the meanest and the toughest, that's the person who's going to take power, right? There's an argument right now that the Americans acting the way that they are, trying to take Venezuela and taking Greenland and doing all these crazy things that they're doing, they're responding to the empire and the colonialism of China because China is so good at going into places and using their influence and getting natural resources and owning parts of all these other countries, which is something that the United States did through providing aid for a long time. And China is just doing it in a little bit more of a hardcore way. So the Americans are reacting to this. So you have a situation where now that we have two superpowers, they're both kind of like shedding ethics a little bit in order to compete with the other one a little bit more fiercely. Do you think that that's true? And does that show you that perhaps the state of nature in anarchy is not really good, and having a world order where there's cooperation and benefits being provided for free to some people sometimes is actually a good thing? Now, this Nazi thing, fascist, communist, there's a lot of people that would argue that this is not, fascism shouldn't be on the left, especially not this symbol, but communists do belong on the left, right? Because they say, let's give everything to everybody. The problem is that in practice, communism has problems that we'll talk about today. Now, that's the idea of left and right. And here we have a different version of that, fascism being the furthest to the right because it just involves following somebody because they're great, because God sent them or whatever. You know, like we're going to follow this person for no reason. And over here, you have communism, and the anarchy is after that. So, I mean, all of these, I think you can make arguments to be like, hey, this line doesn't make sense. And then you look at this one, and anarchy's back over on the right again. Communism's on the left. We have fascism on the... It just doesn't make any sense anymore, right? So these political spectra make some sense in Europe and the United States, but they are not a good way of seeing politics as an expression of ethics. So that's why we did the political compass. We have these 4 quadrants that give us a measure between anarchy and totalitarianism. Anarchy being complete freedom. We don't want anybody telling us what to do. And totalitarianism saying, I don't trust humans to be good, and so I need a very strong government to tell humans what to do because otherwise they will be bad, right? So totalitarianism is not just authoritarianism. Authoritarianism means I don't care what the people think and I'm going to do whatever. But totalitarianism is that I don't care what the people think and I'm going to control their personal lives deeply. That's the further step, right? So somewhere like North Korea would clearly be authoritarian and totalitarian because they control the personal lives of people to a very large degree. A lot of people criticize Thailand. I mean, my Thai friends criticize Thailand and say that it's authoritarian. And it is. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's not really a good democracy. Not that democracy is good, but if it's trying to be a good democracy, it's not very good at being a democracy. But Thailand is not totalitarian because your normal day-to-day life is not being heavily controlled by the government. The government does not care what you think at all unless you're a multi-billionaire or, you know, you a general or somebody who has power that can be immediately turned into violence, right? But they're not messing with the small things that happen in your life. So that's kind of like my view of what Thailand's relationship with freedom is. You have personal freedom, but your ability to influence the government is pretty much zero. And you can, not zero, but like very close to zero. And you could tell me what you think of that. If you disagree, please disagree. Like I said, I am just going to be trying to give you ideas that you can argue against. So if you want to say, hey, man, you're saying Thailand is authoritarian. No, it isn't, and here's why, right? Or you're saying Thailand is not totalitarian. I do believe it's totalitarian, and here's why, right? You can say whatever you want, but if you're talking about Thai politics, just don't go to jail, right? Okay. So on the other side, we have socialism and capitalism, which we started to describe last time. Socialism means usually that we're comfortable taxing everybody, being like, hey, we need money from everybody. We're all going to throw in, give us this money, give us all these resources, and then we're going to distribute these resources to humans. We're going to take care of humans because humans have needs, and we're going to meet those needs, right? And the way that we're going to do it is we're just going to give it to everybody who needs it. Right. And maybe that means that you fill out some forms and we see how much money you make. And it's like, you don't make enough money. We're going to give you some free stuff. And it's going to come from the people who can pay. Right. Or you filled out the form. You make a lot of money. You could buy your own stuff. You don't need free stuff. Right. That's one form of socialism. It's kind of like limited socialism. Turn socialism all the way up and you get communism, which should be a state of pure equality. But as we'll talk about later, no one has been able to do this right. And you can argue with me if you like, but I say no one has been able to do it right. Okay. So capitalism, of course, is a system of markets, and those markets involve me saying, hey, do you want to buy this book? How much do you want to pay for it? How about 500 baht? And you say no. Okay, so you're using your intelligence to say no to me selling you this book for 500 baht. And so I use my intelligence and I say, how about 300? Then you go, 275. I go, all right, how about 275? So we're using our intelligence in order to decide how to deliver value to you, right? And the reason that people who like capitalism say that capitalism works is that everyone is using their intelligence in this way all the time. And if you have a command economy, you can't do that. Everything costs a certain amount. In the former Soviet Union, televisions would be stamped with a price. It must be sold at this price. We're not doing any capitalism, so you can't just like pick a random price and sell it. Right? Okay. So we did the political compass, right? We know all of the memes. You could do a whole philosophy presentation at the end about political compass memes. Just look them up. And that's if politics is interesting to you and if you want to do the philosophy behind it and make some jokes. Please do the political compass memes. They're great fun. You're welcome to do that. Okay. So this is one more way of looking at politics is to try to say, we're going to say who are the authoritarians and who are the libertarians, who is interested in capitalism and who is interested in more like socialism and communism, who wants to let markets solve the problems and who wants to just give people the things that they need through redistribution, taking stuff and just giving it to humans. And it's not about money. That's the left in this state. Here's the right. And if you don't remember how these work, this is wanting to have a strong government and a lot of trust in capitalism. This is having a weak government, more freedom, but lots of trust in capitalism. This is a lot of trust in government, no trust in capitalism. And this is no trust in government and no trust in capitalism. And like I said before, no governments have been created in this green quadrant. If you took the test in Thai, they might be different colors. So you might need to kind of like translate those results a little bit. So this is one more idea from you. And I'm going to do one more thing with kind of like the left-right political compass idea. And this is the horseshoe theory. Okay, so this is from a video I saw on my Twitter recently. And this guy takes the idea between the left on the left and you have the right on the right. And he said that it's actually like a horseshoe where you bend it into a circle. So it's not a line with the left on the left and the right on the right. Instead, what you have is, yeah, there are conservatives over here on the right, and you have progressives over here on the left. But once you start to keep going down this left side, you become a socialist, and the socialists actually start pulling inward to the point where they make more sense over here. And you have communism on the left here, and you have fascism on the right over here. And these two are actually close to each other. And remember, we saw the political compass at the extremes. They are starting to switch sides, right? And you see these memes and you're like, how come you have communism over here and now you have communism over here? How come you have anarchy over here and now you have it over here? Why is fascism flipping to both sides? And fascism just means like, this is Hitler. He's really loud and yelling, and we really believe in Hitler. And you're like, yeah, Hitler's so great. And then somebody else says, oh, Hitler's not so great. Oh, kill that guy. He said Hitler's not great. And there's like there's no reason for it. It's just that this is a person that we think is great, right? I won't keep going with this because I am obviously not going to be like, yay, fascism, right? It's probably the system of government that I think is the stupidest, because it's just like you have somebody who thinks they're awesome and they convince a few people that they're awesome, and then everybody is convinced that they're awesome, but there's no reason. There's no like, it's just this guy's so great, right? Like that's why followers of Trump will say Trump is a fascist or something. I don't know. He's maybe a demagogue, and we already talked about what that means. So let's get back to this idea right here. What do we have with the people who are closer together, and what do we have with the people who are, what is a centrist is basically the question. Because if you have a normal left-right way of seeing things, and here's our normal left-right way of seeing things, you have the Republicans are on the right, and then if you go even further to the right, you have the libertarians. If you go even further to the right, you have anarchists who want no government. And the left, you have Democrats, they want a strong government. The socialists want an even stronger government, and forget this sign, but the communists want a super strong government, right? So you think you have this very simple line, and if you're here, you're a centrist. And the idea of a centrist is something that I think is, it just sounds really boring. It sounds like you're like, okay, what does the left think? What does the right think? I know. I just think something in between, right? What kind of a position is that? You just average out what everybody wants, and I want something somewhere in the middle. But what does that even mean, right? So this is like a version of centrism that I think is actually kind of good. And they say, okay, yeah, classical liberals, they're in the center because they don't totally disagree with the conservatives, and they don't totally disagree with the progressives. And remember, the word conservative means I don't want things to change. I'm afraid that things change. I want things to stay the same. That's the conservatives. Confucius is a good example of a conservative because he always said, society is bad. If we go back, things were good back then. Let's get back there because that's when things were good. I mean, that's the ultimate conservative, because you're not just saying, hey, I don't want things to change. You're saying all the things that changed recently, I want that all to change back to the way that it used to be, right? And you hear people say conservative stuff all the time. People like, dude, I wish that we didn't have smartphones anymore because smartphones have changed society, and I don't like the way smartphones have changed society. That's a conservative thing to say. Or you can say auto-tune and pitch correction, vocal pitch correction, and people playing with data. It has changed music so much because you don't need to be good at singing anymore, and you don't need to perform live. So now we just have these cute musicians who are really cute, but you don't know if they can sing, and now you don't care if they can sing. They're a singer because they're cute, and you can kind of create some Vocaloid version of whatever's kind of coming out of their mouth, and they could just lip sync, and we don't care anymore, right? I'm being a conservative because I'm saying I want to go back to the time where singers sang. right? That's a conservative way of seeing things because the world has changed and now we have singers who are cute, who like kind of sing sometimes, right? But they sing into a string of laptops, all of them with a bunch of pitch correction on there so that they never, ever, ever make a mistake because there's a bunch of people in the audience that are filming them with their smartphones. And if you make a mistake, you just have to Google Shawn Mendes sucks, and then there's like a video of him hitting one bad note one time, and everyone's like, oh, he sucks, see? Right? So everybody's afraid because we have this great surveillance system. I'm being a conservative right now, and I'm saying, man, all this technology is kind of like ruining music. I wish we could go back, right? This is a conservative way of seeing things. What is progressive? Progressive doesn't mean human rights. It doesn't mean good. It doesn't mean smart. It just means I want progress. Progress is change. And I'm probably more of a progressive, and I probably want more change towards good things, right? I see that there are problems in the world, and I want to change those problems to be different, right? And I want to be going forward and moving away from things that are stuck from times in history that sucked, right? So the thing is, though, progressives will sometimes say that they want change for, the sake of change, right? We need to move things forward. That's old. Old is bad, right? Well, I mean, you guys are young, but I'm sure at least some of you are thinking, yeah, man, I actually wish that you had to sing to be a singer. Or like, I wish that we didn't have all these MIDI instruments so that more musicians would be paid to play music or something. When you're recording with the software and the plugins and the, like neural DSP and the, like modeling microphones and stuff, you're like, oh my God, this is so easy and I love it and it's so amazing. But there are some things about technology that I think even you young people would think like, yeah, man, I kind of wish we could go back to whatever that is, right? So it's not really true that the progressives are always right and the conservatives are always wrong, even in music, like some of us have actually like conservative ideas about music. Some of that is good, when somebody says, yeah, I think singers should actually have to sing the parts sometimes in some genres, right? In some genres, not in K-pop, but in some genres. Not hating on K-pop. All right. So this idea here puts the classical liberal as the ultimate individualist and saying, they're creating another axis kind of and saying the collectivists say, this is about we, the I melts into the we. And with the fascist project, you are just as important as you are to Hitler, that's as important as you are, right? In Imperial Japan during World War II, when they were, doing the rape of Nanking and Japan's awesome. I love them. Great. But like Japan during World War II were involved in a fascist project. And it was just like, however much you could do this thing, you're just a part of this thing and you don't matter at all. Communism is a similar situation. Communism famously resulted in a lot of death of the people in the country. Like communists killed a lot of their own people. This is not really controversial. I mean, it is controversial, but it's not, people don't argue that much against it, right? And this is a situation where the individual is expendable because the whole must survive. And a lot of people say that Mao Zedong, I don't pronounce his name correctly, I'm sorry, inherited a country that had so many problems, was so torn up from so many wars, that the best that he could do is try to save the country at the expense of all of the people who had died. And if I'm wrong, you can do a whole project telling me why I'm wrong. You don't have to agree with me. Okay. So we can come close to putting politics to bed now and say that we have this other way of seeing things where we have left as this desire to change and right as this desire to not change or to go back. And here we have the other axis as individuals who care about individual rights, individual merit, right? Who are you? You're a human being who deserves rights, and there are many things that we cannot do to you. These are sometimes called negative rights. They're the things that cannot be done to you. They're the things that you cannot suffer. Positive rights are things like education and healthcare because they require somebody else to work in order to make that happen for you, right? Individualists are about the rights of the individual. They're also about the talents of the individual. Do I believe what you say or not? How smart are you? What's your reputation? What is your body of work? What have you created? What do I know about you? And I can use all of these things to weight people. So we have equality and we also have inequality. If you're a great scientist, I believe you more. If you're some random dude off the street, I believe you less, right? Based on your individual characteristics. So we have all of these human beings receiving these universal human rights, but at the same time, we can differentiate. Does this make sense? Does it bother you? If it bothers you, that's your project. All right, let's go to communism for a bit. Okay, so it's important to differentiate between the sort of Western Falang idea of property versus the communist idea of property. When you are a musician right now, you're dealing with intellectual property law, and the intellectual property law you're dealing with comes from Falang land. And this is the idea of John Locke talking about mixing the labor with the land in order to own property. That showed up in England and in the United States, and that idea of property spread to basically everywhere. If you are stealing a song in New York City or you're stealing a song in Bangkok, the same kind of law is going to hit you now, right? But if you go back before records, that wasn't necessarily true. If you made a great folk song, that great folk song was the property of humanity, right? It was the property of your whole culture. And cultures weren't talking all that often. So if you learned a song from another culture, cool, right? Now we have this idea of cultural appropriation. And that kind of helps you understand the ownership of a piece of art by a culture, right? Like you say, like flamenco guitar or something. If you're not from Spain or Mexico and you start playing some flamenco guitar, are you stealing from that culture? Cultural appropriation is a very interesting idea because, I think it's based on the idea that a culture can own intellectual property, at least in a limited way, right? If you see people who are making like Thai pop rap and they're not Thai, wouldn't you be like, man, what are you doing, you know? And think about like Cambodia, Thailand, you get this kind of back and forth as to what is the original traditional music, right? That's a traditional Thai instrument. No, it's a traditional Khmer instrument. You know, like you have this idea of a culture owning kind of intellectual property. It's not always about a temple or, you know, like an object. It's like a style. Or who made up Muay Thai? Is Muay Thai Thai boxing? Is Thai boxing Thai, or is it Khmer? Or is Lathway the Burmese version? Is that the more ancient version? So you can talk about cultural appropriation, the ability of, you know, is this a Thai chada or not? Or is it a Cambodian chada or something, right? Please bring it. It might be interesting. So before the era of basically capitalism, intellectual property in the art space wasn't necessarily, you couldn't find a songwriter. Like I said in an earlier episode, Amazing Grace, Black is the Color of My True Love's Hair. These are songs that we don't know who wrote them because they were songs that kind of existed in culture. And part of that is because there was no money to be made off of a song. If you own Golden by K-pop Demon Hunter, you're making a lot of money right now because that song is everywhere. And there are these capitalistic, it's digital capitalism. There are mechanisms that are in place to bring that songwriter, song owner, money, right? And you probably hope to own pieces of music that explode and become huge, and then money comes back to you. But that's because of a recognition that you own that property in some way. So where does it come from? So in libertarianism, we remember that we have to have consent. And what we're consenting to is a social contract. And this is the idea that we're all living together in this samaki, in this harmony, in this world peace, world trade, where the markets are open and the soldiers are not running through burning all of the cities all the time. We live in general peace, and we live under a limited law that protects life, liberty, and property. And in these conditions, I own myself, because we're not in a state of war, and I own my labor. I can't be enslaved. And when I work, I mix my labor with the land, and then I own property. And we talked about the musical version of that being, I take the style of jazz and the keys of A minor, G minor, and D minor, and I make this composition. Nobody owns A minor, nobody owns G minor, nobody owns D minor, these keys. Nobody owns jazz. And so I take these things, I mix them with my own creativity, I make original melodies, I use my language skills to make original lyrics, and I make some jazz tune in the following keys. I make the cool transitions in between them. Then I teach them to some people, I record it, I put it out, and it's mine because I mixed my creativity with the natural resources of music, right? So this is intellectual property. Now, one of my questions for you now is this the best way to make creativity happen? People who like capitalism say, yes, it is, because there's the chance that you might own a hit, right? This might be your song that's driving money back to you because you've made it. Also, though, is there a better way to incentivize creativity? And wouldn't it be better if it belonged to all of us? What do you think is the best way to create a world for the musicians? You'll see in there the Dispossessed. I gave you the sections from the Dispossessed. It's only like 3 pages long, but it's all the parts of this book about an anarchist utopia where everything is almost perfect, but the people who are still having big problems are the artists. Check it out if you like. Okay, so here's art/labor as music. If you look at John Lennon's song here, he says, imagine there's no heaven, right? So he's saying, we're just living this one life. And in the next one, he says, imagine there's no countries. We don't have to have these little bodies that are fighting for resources against all of the other bodies that are all full of humans. We could have one world, one communist world where everybody is equal. And then he gets to the end and he says, imagine no possessions. Now let's just look at the first 2 lines of each one. The first verse, imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. So that means imagining that this is the only world that you're ever going to live in is actually easy if you try. Because when you look around, that's all you see, right? So he's like, oh yeah, atheism is obvious. Great, right? Next, he says, imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. If you go up on a high mountain in the Golden Triangle and you look over, there's Laos and there's Myanmar and there's Thailand, and I can't tell. They just all look like a bunch of mountains. I can't see the border, right? Maybe the border is a river. But there's some places you stand and the border is, you don't even know what it is. You could dance back and forth between these 2 countries. Countries aren't real. They're just in our collective imagination as humans. So it's easy to imagine a world with no countries. However, when he says, imagine no possessions, I wonder if you can. That's the dreamer part, because a lot of people think that the desire to have property is quite natural. And an example of that would be like, think about your primary instrument. My primary instrument is my Martin acoustic guitar. It's a performing artist series. It plugs in and it immediately sounds really good plugged in, right? Because I sing really loud. I need to have a guitar that plugs in. I'm always like playing gigs with this thing. It's my main guitar. If somebody was like, hey, can I play your guitar? I don't say, yeah, go ahead. I look at who the person is and I wonder if they've washed their hands, and I'm worried about my guitar and I want to make sure that it's okay. I don't want somebody to be like beating on it because I care about my guitar. Think about your own primary instrument, whether it's your violin, your flute, your saxophone, whatever it is that you play. Do you want somebody else touching your instrument? And you're like, no, get away from my thing, right? These are our possessions. Another one would be like your house, your room, your bed. What if somebody said, hey, can I sleep in your bed? You might be like, have you taken a shower? Because I don't think I want you in my bed if you haven't taken a shower, because that's my bed. We want our stuff, right? And part of this is kind of the sin of desiring objects and attaching yourself to these objects. And it can be quite unhealthy to get too attached to objects. But being somewhat attached to our possessions that we work so hard to guard and clean and maintain is actually quite natural. So a lot of people who argue against communism will bring that up and say, hey, it's actually quite natural for us to want our stuff. In an earlier lecture, we talked about how humanity in tribes was way less materialistic because we couldn't have a lot of stuff because we're moving around all the time. I would have like a spear, and if somebody like took my spear, I'd be like, dude, give me my spear back. Oh, sorry, I thought that was mine. And then, good, thanks, right? But at some point, my spear is going to break. Then the important thing is knowing how to make another one. And then I make another one, and I'm like, all right, my old spear broke. Oh, that was inconvenient for a second, but I made another one, right? I'd have clothes maybe, and those clothes would kind of break, and then I'd fix them. But I wouldn't have 200 pants and 500 shirts because I couldn't carry any of that stuff. So the idea of property when we're tribes doesn't matter so much until we start farming. And once we start farming, we have houses. And in our houses, we can store stuff. This is Rousseau's idea about kind of coming out of the Garden of Eden, coming out of the state of nature, and becoming farmers who just eat rice every single day. It's not berries today and, deer tomorrow. And it's not an exciting life anymore. Now we're tied to our stuff, right? So the relationship between humans and possessions is endlessly interesting. You can do any kind of final presentation about that you'd like. Okay, so I think it all comes down to this idea that we have in John Lennon's song, Imagine, that in the end, imagine no possessions, I wonder if you can. I mean, maybe he didn't mean to put it that way, but these other things are easy, and this one is very difficult. Okay. So now we should look at Karl Marx, who is the founder of the idea of communism. So we all know our current system isn't perfect. We do this to the world. There are a lot of people living like this. Meanwhile, Americans are living like this. Furthermore, we have this problem where a lot of people want free stuff, but nobody wants to pay for free stuff for other people, right? So why is our system like this? Well, our most famous critic of capitalism is Mr. Karl Marx. That's not Santa Claus. And he is the father of the idea of communism. That's the idea of communism, not the system of government. When I give a test about this, I'll have a question that says, Karl Marx told us exactly how to run a communist government, and all of the communist governments today follow his book exactly. That's a Guantine question. Like, it's a fake question. No, that's not true, right? Okay. So what is communism? So communism is a reaction against capitalism. It is not against democracy. It is not against freedom. And it's kind of more like utilitarianism. Remember, utilitarianism was the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Communism turns that knob all the way up and says, we're going to provide the greatest good for everyone. The greatest number of people is going to be everyone. We're not going to sacrifice anyone. Everyone is going to be purely equal. No. Okay. So what is an ism? It's a belief. What is capitalism? It is the belief in capital, or belief in the importance of capital, the belief in the power of markets to deliver the best value for humans. And it's the belief in the power of money, right? And we all can see that money gets into our relationships. It gets into our, decisions in ways that kind of hurt sometimes, right? Okay, so what's wrong with capitalism? Karl Marx gave us these big four problems. Number one is that modern work is alienated, and that means that work should bring us joy and fulfillment, but it often feels meaningless. Now, alienation is not that it turns you into an alien. It is a disconnection between what you do all day and what you feel like you really are. And the example that I give you for music that I usually ask in classrooms is, how many of you will play 3-hour gigs? How many of you play 3-hour gigs? You can maybe share in your writing this week. When I was trying to pay tuition for my kid in Thailand, would be playing these 3-hour hotel gigs alone. Because if I play alone, I get paid the most money because I'm just one person. If I have a duo, I like playing better. It's so much more fun, but the two of us get an amount of money. And since I'm a good communist, I would split that money with the other person, and that would be less money per hour. And I needed the most money per hour. So I changed the way that I was playing music based on the way to make the most money. And I did not receive the most happiness, especially from playing the music. I'd be playing it. I'd play one set. I'd play the second set. And in the break between the second set and the third set, I'd be like laying down, tired from, like teaching all day and then playing music all night. And I'd be thinking, I don't want to play the third set. I just want to go home and go to sleep because I'm so tired. And that's not, like the experience with music that I wanted to have. The experiences with music that I like having is when I'm playing music with other people and there's this beautiful thing flowing through all of us. And also sometimes I play music alone, and I'll go play a gig for 30 minutes, right? It's just a 30-minute set, but I will go absolutely crazy for 30 minutes and just play at like the absolute like top of my power and just be as crazy as I possibly be and bring the most emotion and insanity to that 30 minutes and then not really make any money. Usually that's just like, I've just done this for the love of music. And then there's other people on the show, they do it, I get to watch them, and I'm like, man, wow, I'm so happy to see you. You're all so talented. This is so great. We don't make any money. We play for like not that many people, and then you go home, and those are the ones that like make me feel great, but there's no money involved in that, right? Because the good way to make money sometimes with music is to do things that you don't want to do. And I mean, that's not what it always is. That's like a dark version of it. I'm not throwing that at you. But if you can get paid to do what you want to do musically, you're so lucky. And, don't let me paint this picture that it's all bad like that. It's not. It's definitely not. And like, you can have a musical path that's going to bring you really good stuff. But there are a lot of musicians who go into this sort of like alienated form of musical labor. And I got into it just to try to pay bills, right? Because you play one gig in a hotel and then they'll just keep booking you. You don't need to bring people in. You just show up and play music and you get some money for playing that music. You're kind of getting paid to practice. And it's like, all right, this is good enough. But while you're doing it, you're sitting there like, man, I hate this. I mean, I hope you're not, but I was. So if you have an experience that's similar to that, how your musical labor has been alienated or might be alienated, or whenever you see a choice between your musical integrity and your love versus your desire to earn money and have a career and stuff, how does that feel? Is that capitalism? Could there be a better system? What do you think? Right? Okay. So modern work is insecure, and that means if I have a band that's like a democracy band and we're all writing music together and somebody says, man, I think that we should do this. And I hear that idea and I'm like, damn, that is a good idea, but it's not my idea. But it's a good idea. And I say, yeah, man, you're right. My idea was not as good. You're really bringing something to this song. What does that mean? Now you own part of the song, right? And when you get into that place with somebody, the possibility of creating something better is so amazing, right? That's the best way to make music, is like working with somebody and like, it's not my idea, it's not your idea, it's our idea now. Wow, we've done something really amazing. But you can't just tell that person what to do anymore, because that person is like a part owner in your musical project. It's way better. But you're not this fascist leader who just tells people what to do anymore. So that person's position in your musical situation is now a lot more real. What do you do about that, right? Well, you have to have a career now, and you have to actually like have discussions about things, and you have to agree with things together. And sometimes you have to bend for the other person. And sometimes you have to be like, fine, I'm going to let this one happen. And sometimes you can't bend and you're like, no, I need to bend you because you're wrong and I still need to keep you. I can't just throw you out and get a new one, right? Modern work is insecure because it's so much better for Taylor Swift to just be Taylor Swift. And if the drummer doesn't agree with the tempo of the song, you just throw the drummer in the garbage and get another one, right? That's capitalism. K-pop is a perfect example of that. This trainee doesn't exactly fit, or she won't get the plastic surgery that you want her to get. You throw her in the garbage and get another one. That's capitalism, right? That's like the apotheosis of capitalism. So in business, they make sure that a worker can be replaced by another worker as easily as possible. McDonald's is a great example of that. There's nobody bringing in their special burger recipe or their special. Nobody can make fries like me. You can't fire me. Nobody can make a McDonald's burger like me. What? You think everybody can make a McDonald's burger like me? 7-Eleven. Nobody can say Sawadee Ka Shun Ka like me, man. You think you can find somebody else who could say Sawadee Ka Shun Ka like me? Of course they can. It's a turnkey system. And as soon as they can replace you with a robot, they immediately will do that, right? So workers are often replaced by technology. The laptop, you used to have this big band. If you were Taylor Swift, you better be bringing, 12 live musicians on the road. They better be all on stage. They better be all good and perfect every single night and ready to go. And then you have to get them a hotel room and you have to shift them. Taylor Swift just has to open up her laptop because nobody cares anymore. And capitalism loves this, right? Because you don't want that many musicians on stage. You want them replaced by MIDI tracks that are being launched by data, right? Okay. So capitalism tries to tell you that you don't matter, right? Because the money matters. And if you can get rid of a human, you don't have to pay that human. That's a problem with capitalism, especially in music. The other one is that workers get paid little while owners get rich. One version of this is to believe that capitalism is bad because it exploits the workers. And that's the part that a lot of people get. And they're like, yeah, capitalism's bad. I like saying capitalism's bad. Well, the other side of this is the idea that you should try to be an owner. And that's why I always tell students at the College of Music, if you have a band and you have made a lot of your own decisions and you're going to keep making a lot of your own decisions, you have to not sign a K-pop deal. A K-pop deal is where, the label has put you together. They've found your songwriters and written that music for you. They found your dance choreographers and written those dances for you. They named you. They dressed you, they trained you, they did everything for you. You guys are going to the College of Music and you're paying for this out of your own pocket. So you are your own art director, you're your own decision maker. And if you make a project with your friends and then a label wants to sign you, they have to give you the creative control of your enterprise that you have earned. And they have to pay you because you are not a K-pop trainee. They did not build everything for you, right? Especially if you already have a following before the label is talking to you and you're like, yeah, our socials have, 20,000 followers on YouTube and we have 100,000 followers on IG. Like, so much of that work is already done and you need to get paid what you're paid. Your label is just going to be a distributor. Yeah, they might be able to take you to the next level, but do not let them give you a K-pop deal. You need to be the owner of your own musical project, right? Workers get paid little while owners get rich. There's two solutions. One, let's have a glorious revolution and flip over capitalism. Do you think that's going to happen in your lifetime? I think it's not going to happen in your lifetime. So capitalism is going to continue. The answer is be an owner of your work, be a songwriter, be a decision maker, and get paid for being the one who owns your musical world. Otherwise, you find yourself in this position where you are just meat for the grinder, getting thrown in there and getting paid as little as humanly possible until you can get thrown away. Most people who work are in this sort of a situation. Trying to become an owner is a good thing. Glorious revolution would be cool. Guessing that it's not going to happen anytime soon. We're also all too comfortable to want that to happen. Okay. Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations. He's one of the greatest thinkers about capitalism. He said that profit is like a mistake. And that's where I am putting in 100,000 baht per month into my various musical projects, but I'm making 500,000 a month, which means that I'm making 400,000 a month in profit. Adam Smith said that that profit is like a mistake because then competition is going to come in. They're going to make it hard for me to make that much money. And so my massive profit is slowly going to go down. He said that profit is like a mistake and the free market will correct that mistake through competition. But our intelligence to find those moments where something is undervalued and then provide that to society for a little while at a good price, those are, the risks that we take as entrepreneurs, but the market will always be correcting that and delivering good things to people at a good price. Marx said profit is theft, and that's where an owner is stealing from a worker. You can see it that way all you want. Marx thought there was going to be a glorious revolution. There has not been a world revolution. So you decide the way you should be living your musical and financial realities. So Marx said that profit is theft. And the last one is capitalism is very unstable. And let me wind this out. Marx said that profit is theft. You have a situation where the workers are working and they're getting stuff done, and they have to also pay this owner class to do nothing. International schools in Thailand are a really good example. You have a building, you have teachers, you have coaches, you have staff, you have people cleaning the place, you have like water and electricity and internet and equipment, and then you have parents that are paying tuition to get their kid to learn there. And if it just went to all that stuff, it would be fine. But you also have these owners who don't do anything, and they have to get paid this immense amount of money because their sons have to drive new cars every year and nobody has a job and stuff. You have just these wealthy families that are attached to the school that are making all of this money. So international schools have to be ridiculously expensive for no reason. It's because you have these families attached to it who don't put anything in. And one of the examples that I always think of is restaurants. And I don't know how you guys feel about this, but if you ever go to a restaurant and the owner is in there cooking and taking orders and running around and talking to everybody, the food is always so much better because that owner is in there actually making it happen. But if the owner is sitting at home playing Candy Crush on their phone and the workers are just working, you have to pay for the food, you have to pay for the workers, and then you have to pay for that owner sitting at home playing with their phone, and they're the ones taking most of the money. So the food usually isn't very good, or the price is too high because you don't have that person in there just like lighting the fire of love in the restaurant. If you agree with me, bring it. Disagree, please disagree. You're welcome to do it. The last idea is that capitalism itself is very unstable. And if you recall the hamburger crisis, this was when the American bankers did a bunch of illegal stuff and kind of ruined the entire world economy. And they do this every, few years. Capitalism itself is very unstable. And the problem is we can have the same amount of houses, the same amount of food, but the money system is messed up, so we can't get people houses and food, so people are homeless and starving, even though there's the same amount of food and there's the same amount of houses. We've messed up this money game that we're playing because the bankers were doing too much crime, but we don't punish the bankers because the bankers kind of run the world, right? There are problems with capitalism. Okay, so Marx was the most famous critic of capitalism. He was the father of the idea of communism. Again, the idea of communism, not the system of government. Capitalism is a belief in capital, right? And it is a belief in the power of money, the belief that markets deliver things to people better than something like a command economy. So what is communism? Maybe you could write about it this week. Communism is the belief in what? Be the belief in the power of our community, right? The power of us together. We talked earlier about individualism versus communitarian ethics and politics. Communism would be a communitarian situation because just like in utilitarianism, you have to give up the I for the benefit of the us. In communism, usually what happens is there is somewhat of a loss of individual freedom so that the us can be okay. What do you think of that, right? Libertarians would hate this kind of idea because they say the I and the freedom can never be sacrificed for the whole because, they believe so strongly in individual rights. Ask me if there has ever been a truly libertarian government. No, there hasn't, right? It's more like a book club. And again, has there ever been a perfect communist utopia? Maybe yes, maybe no. There's an idea that if you had maybe 25 people, it would be no problem being communist. But with a larger group, the quote-unquote distributed intelligence of capitalism delivers value to humans better because, like I said, if I have 500 avocados and I'm selling them at 100 baht a piece for my avocados, nobody's buying them. I'm looking at my avocados. I know that they're ripe right now. They're going to be delicious today, but tomorrow they're all going to be rotten and I'm going to have to throw them in the garbage. And I say, well, I want to get 100 baht for each one of these 500 avocados, but nobody's buying them. And I take my sign and I cross out the 100 baht and I say, 3 for 100 baht. You can have 3 avocados for 100 baht. Then people start buying them. I still make some money. I don't make as much as I wanted to, but I still make some money. People get these really delicious avocados and they remember me, and maybe they're my long-term customer now. I made a good decision, and I didn't have to ask the government to make that decision. I just made that decision, right? So this is the difference between a free market and a command economy. What do you think is better? And what do you think is better for music? Communism is the idea of from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. And this basically means if I'm a doctor, I should be healing the sick, not the sick who have money, not the sick who, are the same color skin as me, not the sick, no, just sick people. Bring me the sick people. You're sick. Come here. How can I help you? I'm a doctor. That's my thing. That's what I do, right? You're a house builder. Build houses, and then people will live in those houses. You're a musician. Make music. Make the world a better place. When it's time to eat, we got you, because people grow food. People make food. You're a musician. You're going to make music. People make food. You're going to eat, right? That is the dream of communism, is that people just do the things that they're good at, and that's and that everything ends up getting done. If you want to read about an anarchist paradise where this kind of thing actually happens without anybody being forced to do things that they don't want to do, read The Dispossessed by Ursula Le Guin. She's in this class for the third time now. The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas, and I think another section of The Dispossessed, and then this one again. Great, great, great author. Very philosophical. But this is the idea behind communism, is from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It just matters that you need things. Now, I've been saying this in other classes, but do you think it would be possible to run a communist utopia with AI and mass surveillance? We got these cameras on us all the time. AI could be remembering everything about us and say, hey, you know that bike you never ride? How about you give that to your neighbor down the street? And you say, oh, I really don't want to. Yeah, I know you really don't want to, but you never ride that bike. So give it to your neighbor. And then you give the bike to your neighbor, and oh man, that hurt, but I guess I don't ever ride it. And then all of a sudden that AI calls you up the next day and says, hey, I noticed that you've been wanting a piano, but you don't have a piano. And there's somebody who never plays their piano. And so that piano is going to be coming to you this afternoon. Just, answer your door at 3:00 and a piano will arrive for you for free, right? Just like you gave that bike for free. You're about to get a piano for free. People know how many cars are necessary. Cars could just be driving around with robot drivers picking us up and taking us to where we need to go constantly. A communist utopia is actually possible with AI God, because it would have the intelligence that distributed intelligence, that's the edge that capitalism had. Well, communism could have that edge in the future because of AI God and endless surveillance into our lives. Write about that if you like. I encourage you to listen to Imagine by John Lennon and tell me if you think that there is a better possible system for musicians. And I'll run through this really quickly. Here's one more question for you. Tell me if you agree with this statement. This is kind of the last thing, and this is not really about music so much. It's about actual capitalism versus actual communism. Now, here's my statement, and you say what you think. The distance between communism and the real world is greater than the distance between capitalism and the real world. Now, what I mean by that is that communism is a beautiful dream, but trying to get this world to look like that world takes a lot of work. And sometimes that work takes the shape of what looks like, countries killing their own people, or like human rights getting smashed in order to try to make this dream of communism happen. Capitalism, however, if you say, hey, that's a nice guitar, you say, oh, thanks, I'm actually selling it. Oh, how much are you selling it for? Oh, I don't know. I mean, how much would you pay for it? Man, can I play it? And then you play the guitar. Oh my God, I'm in love with this guitar. I'll give you 30,000 baht right now. And you're thinking, yeah, man, I'll take it. And then that person gives you 30,000 baht. You give them the guitar. The person walks away with the guitar like, oh my God, I'm happy. You walk away with the money and you're like, this is like more than I bought that guitar for. And I never put any work into it. Like, I'm happy. The other person's happy. Boom. The government wasn't involved at all. You just you just made something happen that's good. You go and you buy a new guitar, you play that guitar, and you're like, oh my God, this is the guitar I really am in love with. So that other person got the guitar they need, you got the guitar you need. Oh wow, what a great market, right? And this is just, it's not that it's amazing, it's just that it's easy to make happen in this world, right? So here's the short version, right? The distance between communism and the real world is greater than the distance between capitalism and the real world, right? So communism has a longer road to cross to bring the perfect world. And capitalism works really well with this imperfect world. Does that make sense to you? And here's the shorthand. Communism distance to reality is greater than capitalism distance to reality. Do you think it's true? Now here's the second question, and this is kind of related. So the distance between the idea of communism and its implementation in the real world is greater than the distance between the idea of capitalism and its implementation in the real world. And I mean, I think that this is true because capitalism is being implemented in this real world, not in its pure form. We don't have people selling kidneys openly on Facebook Marketplace. You can't buy organs on Facebook Marketplace, right? You shouldn't be able to buy people. You can in some places, but you shouldn't be able to. There are people trying to stop human trafficking, but capitalism, man, it's here. It looks like everything's for sale. Communism, I think it would be hard to really make it happen because even the capitalist, even the communist nations need money because they live in a capitalist world. And in The Dispossessed, you have communism happening on the moon so that it could get away from the capitalists on the earth. So let's keep going. Tell me if you agree with this statement. So communism to reality, greater distance than capitalism to reality. Now, if that's true, does that mean that capitalism is natural, right? If the distance between communism and reality is more than the distance between capitalism and reality, capitalism is very close to reality, this messed up world that we live of tok and anicang and pain and suffering works real well with capitalism. So does that mean capitalism is natural? Does that mean that communism is unnatural? Now, tell me if you agree with this statement. Does natural mean good? Does unnatural mean bad? Eyeglasses are unnatural, but people like to put them on and be able to read, don't they? I don't know. What do you think, right? Philosophy, bro. So if communism and reality have a greater distance, capitalism and reality have a closer distance. And capitalism is natural and communism is unnatural. Therefore, authoritarian government is required to implement communism. Because it's not natural for people, you need the authoritarian government to implement communism. Do you think this is true? Do you think it's false? Do you think it's true and unfortunate? Do you think it's true and good? Up to you, right? So this will be our last idea for today because we've gone deeper into communism than I expected to. The idea of class consciousness is something that is huge in communism. Now, this is from the book Animal Farm that was written by George Orwell. And he talks about how the pigs ended up taking over the human farm, but then they ended up wearing clothes and walking around like humans. So they said that the bourgeoisie was bad, the humans are bad, but then they took over the humans' position and then they immediately started to act like humans, right? This is his problem. And this is often what happens in the communist situations is that the authoritarians take power and then they do the sorts of things that the bourgeois do, and they also exploit the proletariat. The proletariat is the workers, and the bourgeoisie is the owners. In Rick and Morty, they call them the makies and the takies, or the makers and the takers, right? So they're the people who create all of the value of society, and they're the people who don't do anything and they take everything. And this was Marx's idea of class consciousness. You had the proletariat who are working, and you have the bourgeois who are owning. And that, in Marx's view, the workers don't own anything, and the bourgeoisie don't do anything. And you could see that break a lot of times in society. And there's a couple of ways of looking at this, right? So historical materialism gives us class consciousness, and understanding oppression. By understanding class consciousness, we're going to get a glorious revolution, but it didn't happen that way. Why? Why didn't it happen that way? And I'm saying there wasn't an inevitable global revolution. Marx said, all of the workers of the world are going to get this. They're going to rise up and they're going to strike off their chains, and they're going to take over the means of production, and they're going to smite their masters. But they didn't do that, right? So why didn't the revolution happen globally and completely as the next evolution of humanity, like he thought it was going to? He thought it was going to be the end of history, right? Historical materialism wasn't correct. That might be why. He might have read history and its next steps wrong. The other question is, was it capitalist conspiracy, sometimes called Western interference, where Western Europe and the United States looked at the USSR and China and other places that were starting socialist and communist projects, and they went in and they tried to destroy the possibility of communist utopia. Like the USSR under Stalin was on its way to being a perfect country, but the Americans, the British, the French, the German, the West Germans got in there and they did whatever they could to try to stop this from happening, right? Same with China. China was on its way to a complete, utopia, but the Americans, the British, the French, they got in there and they did something to stop them from getting to that level, right? Is that a possibility? Another possibility is the creation of a middle class as the shield between the rich and the poor. So this is less alienation for people with voices and more alienation for the voiceless. You have an underclass and nobody cares about them. But there are some people who can dream about getting to the point where they can live in a home that's okay, they can eat enough, they can maybe even have a car and go on vacation sometimes. And since this middle class dream exists, you can say, okay, you don't want to have a revolution, you just want to be middle class. Because if you're middle class, you're all right. Is that why there was the creation of the middle class? Is that why there wasn't a global revolution? I don't know. What do you think? Okay. So there's another way of seeing this that says that we are living in kind of like cycles, right? In maybe 2008, 2009, you had that global financial crisis that I mentioned. And the global financial crisis, the bankers just completely destroyed the world economy, and they weren't going to suffer because they're rich, because they're bankers, right? So they just completely ruined everything for everybody, and they didn't suffer any of the consequences, right? So Michael Sandel from Harvard talks about this. He said, why are you paid so much when you get it right in banking if you're not subject to any losses when you get it wrong in banking? It's a very good question. Why do we pay you so much more than we pay our doctors and our teachers and our police officers and our firefighters and the people who provide value for society? Musicians, right? Why do we pay bankers so much more if they have no idea what they're doing, and sometimes they break the world economy and screw everything up? Are they doing such a good job all the time that it makes sense to pay them this? They said during the financial crisis, we don't know what's happening because nobody knows what's happening. It's like, well, then why are we paying you so much? Why do you have this position in society? And why is this position so well paid? And why are other positions not so well paid, right? Why does this financial class, this business class get to prosper so much while the people who are actually providing value for society not getting paid anywhere near that much? Do you have a good answer? Well, the world kind of asked that question in what was called the Occupy protests. And if you look this up, it's very interesting. I went to a few of them. They were very interesting. And everybody was kind of like camping in these parks, and they didn't have a set of demands. They didn't have a leader, but they were like, man, things are messed up. We don't really know what it is, but it's just a problem with these, really rich people not doing much and getting all of this stuff, and just doesn't seem like the system is set up to take care of human beings. It seems like it's set up to take care of these very few human beings, and not really for any good reason. And kind of right after that Occupy thing got broken down, we got this culture war, identity politics thing, where it's all about like whether or not you're afraid of gay people or not. And they split the country up on that, and they got them fighting each other over racism and like gender and like all of these other things, trying to like split everybody up. So like the men and women are fighting, and the straight people and the gay people are fighting, and like people of every race don't like each other anymore. They like were able to divide and conquer, and then nobody's talking about money anymore. Everybody's talking about all of these other things that are not really solvable issues. They're trying to just like hack everybody up so nobody's friends anymore. So it does seem like you have these moments where an inevitable global revolution is going to happen, but then there is something that happens that kind of like slows that down a little bit. Okay. So the language of the Occupy movement was the language of the 99% versus the 1%. And a lot of people did the math and kind of started to realize, oh, hey, I might not be part of the 1%, but I'm definitely part of the upper 10% of the world, for sure. And the question is this language communist? Is this saying, hey, why do we all have to live in this rough way so that these people can live in a way that brings them so much happiness that they probably can't even feel it? It's a really good ethical, philosophical question. Okay. So ultimately, you have this kind of battle of ideologies here. You have this idea that there's a fight between the makers and the takers, and the people who are actually providing value for society deserve to be paid more. We should get rid of these people who are like rent seekers and who don't do anything, right? But people who work should be glorified and taken care of, and people who don't provide any value for society, why do we need them? Why, like if the factory runs just fine, why does the factory need an owner? And you have this other side of things. And this is the idea that, yes, owning stuff is really good because owning stuff gives you something for free. These are assets that earn while you sleep. And you want those assets, and you want them as a musician. You want to own yourself. You want to own your songs. You want to own your musical identity. You want to own your social media accounts so that if it doesn't work out with a label, you still have yourself, right? You still own your musical self. You don't want to sell that, right? Because that's an asset that you can keep. In music, man, I mean, really it's good to be like doing music for your soul and then have something else that's like good at just making money, because doing something beautiful like music and earning money, it's very hard to get those things to cross. I hope that you do it, right? But we have this battle of ideologies where like some people think that just saying the rich people are evil, the system is broken, that this kind of thing does not put food on your plate. It doesn't give you a place to sleep. It doesn't pay for your car. It doesn't take you on vacation. And it doesn't get you into the studio to make your ideas happen. But if you have a bunch of money that comes from owning assets that earn while you sleep, right? That Marx is saying this is evil and stuff. that does put food on your plate, and it gets you a car, it gets you a place to live, and it puts you in the studio when you have an idea so that you can make that idea happen, right? It lets you hire a video editor for, hey, can you make this video awesome for me? I'll give you 10,000 baht. And you could just give up that 10,000 baht to somebody to shoot and edit and make you look awesome so that you could put that on social media and glorify your project. Doesn't that feel good? Money can make a lot of really good things happen. It's a battle of ideologies. Do you want to hate the players? Do you want to hate the game? Or do you want to realize that the game kind of is what it is, and it is kind of hateable? But knowing the rules of the game and trying to play within those rules of the game is probably the right way for most of us. If you want to be a glorious revolutionary, go for it. That's cool. Don't get arrested. Otherwise, I want to know what you think in the comments, because we've gone full bore on communism so far. All right, that'll do it for today, because we went deep into communism, and I think it was a blast. I very much enjoy talking about this kind of stuff. If it's interesting to you, pick it up for your final presentations. Those will be happening, as I said in the beginning, in the next few weeks. We have 3 lectures left. This one is finished now, so you have 2 more, right? And during these 2 more, I'm going to be continuing to throw ideas at you that you can use for your final presentations, which will be live in Zoom. We will actually see each other. So to do those, like I said before, you will join a group, sign up in your group together. I'll show you exactly how to do that in the next video. And yeah. I look forward to reading what you write this week. I look forward to your quizzes, and 2 more weeks, and then we will be arguing face to face. I very much look forward to it. You are, of course, allowed to disagree with me. You're allowed to not disagree with me. Is that you don't have to disagree with me. I'm just telling you, if I say something and you're like, I just don't think that's right, and I feel in my heart that I need to argue with you about this, right? You are welcome to do that. I'm not kidding. The only thing that you're not allowed to do is copy stuff off of ChatGPT or some other chatbot and lifelessly read some script that somebody else wrote. Don't do it, right? You can talk about anything that you want. By now, you know what philosophy is. It's these big, hard questions where you're like, I don't know what I think about that. I don't know. Wait a minute, I do know what I think about that. And here it is, right? Whatever that is, that's you doing philosophy, and that's what we're going to be doing for the last 3 weeks of class. I really look forward to it. It's always my favorite time of the year, because I get to hear everything that you think when you're at your strongest, because you've been taking in these ideas, writing back and forth with all of them. We've had our arguments about stuff in the live sessions, and you're totally ready to go. Pick like 5, 6 of your friends, join a group, and jump into the group together, and just go out to a restaurant and eat together, talk about whatever the interesting idea is, and try to get into kind of like an argument together, and like see if you disagree even within your group. If you disagree with stuff, and be like, oh yeah, this is good. You don't have to all agree, and you could be like, he thinks, this about ethics or art or whatever, and like we think da 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 da. Like questions as simple as, should musicians be able to use auto-tune and data when they are performing? Should we still call them musicians, or should we call them just performers? Are they cheating? Is it fake? Am I an old musical conservative for even suggesting that Taylor Swift is not as good because she's using a auto-tune the whole way through, and all of the big hooks are just like these giant vocal stacks of like 9 recorded tracks, and her lip syncing until it's just like a breathy, boring part where there's no danger of her going out of tune, and even so she's still auto-tuned. Like, is creating the illusion that somebody is actually doing music ethically right. Is it ethically wrong? Is this a new thing that's not a musician at all? What do you think about this stuff? Is it interesting to you? Fight about it with your friends. Music technology students always have like the easiest time with this kind of stuff because the question, is this right? Is this cheating? Music technology students are often kind of interested in whether it's right and whether it's cheating and whether it's good or bad or whatever. It is what it is. That's a very easy philosophical conversation to have, right? It doesn't have to be about music, but, this is the College of Music. We're thinking about it a lot. It kind of makes it easier because you're already passionate about it. Bring it. Bring what you want. Send messages in the line group and ask if this is a good presentation idea or not. I will always say yes. Also, like, if you're one of the people who has like 10 presentation ideas and you're like, man, I can't even pick which one I want, please take your favorite one and keep it for yourself, and then take idea number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Like all of your ideas that are good, but you're not going to do those. And like, say like, John, is it okay if we do any of these ideas? And then just like post those ideas into the line group, because then people are going to see your ideas and then they're going to be like, oh, cool. And then like, since you think it's an interesting project, maybe somebody else is going to want to do it because they see your idea there. And you could write like, oh, we're not going to take those. So if anybody else wants to take those, you can, right? And then you get to see somebody do your idea when you show up to the Zoom, if you show up to the Zoom, and then you get to see that idea that you wanted to see anyway. So it's kind of like a way of making the class better for yourself. So yeah, please do reach out in the line group. I'd love to answer any questions there, especially about final presentations. 40%. I'm not going to be grading like a tiger. All I want to see is that you are thinking your own thoughts. You are speaking your own words. You are thinking your own thoughts. You are speaking your own words. You are thinking your own thoughts. You are speaking your own words. You are thinking your own thoughts. You are speaking your own words. Why do I say this? Because I don't want ChatGPT scripts. No scripts, no scripts, no scripts, no scripts, no scripts, no scripts. All right, my voice is dead. I'm going to go eat some food, and I really definitely look forward to final presentations, but I really look forward to reading what you write. And thanks for coming on this journey, and I'll see you really soon. Peace.